Hey, how you doing today? My name is Relyea and thank you so much for stopping by. Today I want to talk about the NPC known as the Hunter, who will actually give you a hunter's journal. And what this does is it allows you to hunt down and try to find every enemy in the game. And if you do that successfully, you will get something at the end called the Hunter's Mark. But I've been asked tons of times, well, what do you even have to do to get the Hunter's Mark? Which enemies do you need for the Hunter's Journal? And so I think the easier question to answer is, what enemies don't count towards the Hunter's Journal? So that's what we're setting out to answer today. What enemies and things, whatever, do not count towards getting the Hunter's Journal complete. And there's actually only 22 different entries that don't count towards getting the Hunter's Journal. So let's go ahead and jump right in. If you're going after the Hunter's Journal, and I'm going to assume that you are, I'm going to also assume that you've already beat most of the bosses in the game. So first off, you've got the Dung Defender, nothing crazy there, but if you go ahead and do this little move here, and over to the left, you've got the White Defender, and this is the first enemy that will not count towards the Hunter's Journal. All right, let's keep going. Next up is the Menderbug, and if you've ever wondered how the background pieces, like this sign here, always seems to get fixed every single time you leave and come back, well, it's because the Menderbug is the one is going back and fixing it every time you leave the area. So believe it or not, every single time that you destroy a sign and go back into the room, you've got a 2% chance of the Menderbug showing up. Well, how are you actually going to kill the Menderbug? Well, the easiest way to hunt down this enemy is to actually jump down here and do a Descending Dark, which will break the sign and gives you a chance to kill the Menderbug as you come down. But, as I said, the Menderbug will not count towards the Hunter's Journal. That's just how you get to the Menderbug. Yeah, happy hunting that one. It takes forever to find the Menderbug, I'm not going to lie. At least for me. I've always had terrible luck with finding the Menderbug. Next up, we've got Zote and all of his Zoteling friends. So from Godhome, again, very late game stuff over here, practice area. And if you didn't know, there is a secret little mini game to defeat all of the Zotelings. If you come here and you're aiming to do a crystal heart to the third opening, 1, 2, 3, I think it's this one. You come up, and then there's a breakable wall. Boom, you hear that? And then up to the left, another breakable wall. And Zote comes out. So, again, this is kind of an interesting area if you've never seen it before. You get to defeat Zote and all of the different Zotelings. There's 4 different types of Zotelings. So there's the Gray Print Zote, the Winged Zoteling, the Hopling Zoteling, and the Volatile Zoteling. So every Zote you kill gives you that little counter down at the bottom. So you got the Hopling Zote right there, a regular Zote. There you go, another regular Zote. Oh, look at that big boy. I must have something on with my nail to make myself so strong. Normally these guys don't go down in one hit like this. But anyways, there you go. There's all the Zotelings. And it just gets harder and harder and harder. But what is cool is if you get to, 52, you get to unlock something in the start menu. So there you go. That's kind of cool. All right, so that was 7. And the next one, 8, is Grimm. Troop Master Grimm doesn't increase the count. And I have to imagine that this is because he's a DLC. And I think all of the DLC bosses and enemies, just generally speaking, don't count. So not only does Grimm not count, but the enemies that lead up to Grimm, the Grimmkin Novice, the Grimmkin Master, and the Grimmkin Nightmare, all 3 of those, which I'll show on the screen right now because I'm not going to go hunt them down. There you go, those guys up there, they also don't count towards the Hunter's Journal. So what's that, 7, 8, 9, 10, we're at 11! Out of 22. So let's keep going. Number 12 is actually none other than Nightmare King Grimm. It's a different boss, all right? It counts as number 12. And so also one thing to note is that after you banish Nightmare King Grimm, if you end up not fighting Nightmare King Grimm in the base game, well then you'll never get Nightmare King Grimm in the Hunter's Journal at all, period. You won't even be able to add him, which I think that's kind of interesting. Coming in at number 13, 14, and 15 are the Nail Masters, Oro and Mado, which they are at the end of the Pantheon of the Master. And then you've got the Pantheon of the Artist, which has Paintmaster Sheo. And at the end of the Pantheon of the Sage is a Great Nail Sage Sly. So each one of those enemies also don't count. And again, I'm pretty sure it's just because they are DLC enemies. That's my assumption of why it is the way that it is. There are 3 enemies that you can face in the White Palace, and you will get all 3 of their Hunter's Journal entries once you get the right half of the White Fragment. Where do you get the right half of the White Fragment? It's at the end of the White Palace from the Pale King himself. Once you get to the end of the White Palace, the 3 you'll unlock are the Wings Molds, this quote-unquote enemy here, the Royal Retainers, and last but not least, one of these guys, the King's Molds. So defeating them normally doesn't get you the Hunter's Journal entry. It's not until you get to the end of the White Palace. That also brings us up to a total of 18 entries, and we're only going up to 22. So there's a couple left. Coming in at number 19, and one that I think is a little bit crazy, is that actually defeating the Hollow Knight doesn't count. And also, I just realized that I definitely miscounted the total that it's in. It's not going to be 22 total. I keep saying 22. It's actually going to be 24. There's 24 different entries, not including the Hunter's Mark. But let's continue. Hollow Knight was number 19. The next one is if you defeat the Radiance, which you would also do in this area, then that would be number 20. So again, I'm surprised that the end bosses aren't considered part of the Hunter's Mark, because you'd think that it's like for every enemy in the game, like we start getting to like those really, really late enemies. I don't know. I get it. I don't get it, but I get it. Okay. Coming in at number 21, all the way back in Godhome, is this right here, the Pantheon of the Night, which at the end of that, you fight the Pier Vessel. Doesn't count. Believe it or not. I think at this point you'll believe it, right? You'll believe anything I say at this point. Who knows? Who knows what we have left? We've got 3 more entries that aren't bosses, but they are Hunter's Journal entries. So it kind of makes sense that they don't count towards the Hunter's Mark achievement, but also kind of not. Hear those saw blades? I think you know what I'm thinking. And that is the Seal of Binding. That is a entry that you get when you complete the Path of Pain. That is not required for the Hunter's Mark. Here in the Hall of Gods, if you complete every single entry, at least at the lowest difficulty, could be any difficulty, you'll make your way through this door and you'll get an item called the Void Idol. Again, another item that you get, but it does not count towards the Hunter's Mark. And last but not least, definitely not least, is the Weathered Mask. In order to get the Weathered Mask, you have to complete every single Pantheon with every single binding. It doesn't have to be all bindings at the same time. You can actually do one run at a time with one binding at a time, but still you have to do every single binding for every single Pantheon, including the 5th Pantheon, in order to get the Weathered Mask. And it will take you to a certain area that you can only access one time. One time you get to see a very special area, and it's called the Land of Storms. It will open up right over here. There'll be a little crack in the wall. And you, like I said, you can only go there once. And so those are the main ones. I was using the Hollow Knight wiki just to double check that I got everything, and I'm seeing that there's actually some other entries. There's some other bosses that aren't included on this list, and again, I think it's because they're DLC enemies and bosses and stuff like that, or they're variants of bosses. And so one of them that I can think of off the top of my head is Winged Nosk. That doesn't count. All the dream versions of bosses don't count. So like the Failed Champion wouldn't count. Hornet, you only have to beat one or the other. I mean, obviously you're going to beat her the first time as the Hornet Protector. Sisters of Battle doesn't count as a second boss. It won't give you an extra entry. Because some of the other ones that we were talking about earlier, you are going to gain an extra entry into the Hunter's Journal, but it doesn't necessarily count as you getting towards the hunter's mark, if that makes sense. Nosk, the opposite entry of that is the winged version of Nosk. That does not count. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, basically all of the alternate versions of these bosses. As far as the hunter's journal counts, it's just the one entry. I'm surprised that there actually is a second entry for Nightmare King Grimm, as well as the White Defender. It seems like they shouldn't have their own entry, because that kind of just breaks the mold of all of the other alternate bosses, but hey, it is what it is at this point. So anyways, there you go. There's all the entries. It was more than 22. We're gonna call it 24. I don't know, 25, something like that. I lost count. I thought I counted correctly at the beginning. I did not. But anyways, thank you so much for watching the end. Thank you to my members for supporting the channel. And yeah, I just appreciate you being here. I'll leave some links down in the description if you're trying to actually hunt the Hunter's Journal, or get 112% or whatever. I'll just, yeah, I'll just check out the description. Thank you, and I'll talk to you again more real soon. Thanks. Bye.